Today we are going to be making my granola recipe that contains almonds and honey and a little bit of brown sugar and old-fashioned rolled oats. So let's go ahead and get started in the kitchen. And before we get started making our granola, you need to go ahead and preheat your oven to 325 degrees because that's what we're going to bake this granola on. What I love about this particular recipe that I've created is it's just very simple with ingredients that typically I have in my pantry, and I'm sure most of you do as well. And one thing that we cook with a lot around here is avocado oil. If you do not have that, you could also substitute butter or coconut oil or whatever you have that's available. This particular recipe also uses old-fashioned oats, so you will need old-fashioned oats and not the quick oats. It also contains honey, cinnamon, a little bit of brown sugar. We have some homemade vanilla here, but you could also omit that if you don't have vanilla, and some sliced almonds. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So to start our granola, we're gonna need a baking sheet that has been lined with some parchment paper, and this is just gonna keep your granola from sticking. Then we're gonna need to mix in 3 cups of the oatmeal. 1, 2, and 3. Next to that, we are going to add in 1 cup of, you can use whole almonds. I personally like sliced almonds. And a lot of our nuts that we get around here come from Bulk Natural Food Company. It's this company that you can buy large amounts of produce and nuts and flours from, and they have really good deals. So usually that's why I buy my, especially the nuts, from them and some of our produce. Then we're gonna need 1/4 of a cup of packed. So packed means it's packed down. So 1/4 of a cup of brown sugar. So next I'm gonna add the oil. So this recipe does call for honey, and I find if you put the oil in first, it makes it much easier to get your honey out. Before I do that though, I am gonna go ahead and give this a little mix just to make sure everything is good and stirred around. Before I add my oil, I want to go ahead and add in the remainder of my dry ingredients. So I need to add 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, and I use the ground cinnamon. We have 1 teaspoon there, and then 1/2. I love cinnamon in granola. If you don't like cinnamon, you can leave it out, but I have a 6-year-old who could probably eat this entire container. She loves to eat cinnamon. And then I need 1/2 teaspoon of salt. A little much in there. All right, there we go. So next I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. I love the smell of vanilla. All right, so vanilla is not a dry ingredient, but I do like to go ahead and add it in with everything just so it gets good and flavorful and coated. All right, so we're mixing that around. You can see how really nice that looks with the brown sugar and the almonds in there. All right, so now we are going to add in our avocado oil. So we need 1/4 a cup of that. And then next, we're gonna add in 1/2 cup of honey. And I'll be honest, I don't like washing dishes, so I just keep using the same measuring cup as well. But also, like I said, with the oil, it helps the honey come out better, I think anyway. All right, so we've got 1/4 there. And then we'll add another one to make 1/2 cup. And you know, you can also use any honey that you have. I know I try to get local honey when I can. I just have not had a chance to do that because actually local honey is my absolute favorite. But again, we're using what we have on hand. That's the great thing about cooking, is typically I try to use whatever we have and make do with that. Also, it really helps with the budget. All right, so you see the honey in there. We're gonna mix all this together and get it all good and mixed. All right, so we have it all good and mixed up. You can see that it's well combined. Some of it's kind of sticking together, which is great because when we put it on our baking sheet, it's gonna give us those fine little clumps that I love when I eat my granola, especially if I have a yogurt parfait with some of this wonderful granola. So we have our granola on our baking sheet, and I've just put it in a single layer. And this granola is gonna take about 20 to 30 minutes to bake. And remember, we've put our oven already preheated on 325 degrees. So what I'm gonna do about every 10 minutes is just take my spatula and give this a good stir, because we want it to cook evenly and also not burn, but we're looking for that really nice crunch when we start baking our granola. Another thing I will suggest if you are like me with kids and you get easily distracted is to remind yourself every 10 minutes to stir the granola. So I have my timer on, otherwise I'm gonna get busy doing other things around the house and it's going to burn. So I have a timer set for every 10 minutes. That way I remember to come in here and give it a good stir. All right, so we are on our first stir, and I take it out of the oven. I know some people do it in the oven, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm very accident prone, and I have burned myself way too many times trying to stir things in the oven, so now I just take things out and give it a stir, and we'll pop it back in here in just a minute.
And here we have the finished version of the granola. And you will also see that this is how I like to store my granola, just in a glass jar. And it makes great gifts and also just a wonderful thing that you can snack on or have for breakfast. Thank you so much for watching today, The Simple Spoon. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Hope to see you again soon.